see Vice Mayor and Councilmember Mahan. So if you don't mind, give me 1 second. I'll get situated and then we'll begin. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Public Safety Finance and Strategic Support Committee on October 20th. We can get a roll call, please.
Arenas,
Here.
Jones,
Present.
Mahan,
Here.
Jimenez, Corrales.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before we begin, I do want to remind the committee members and members of the public to follow our code of conduct at this meeting. This includes commenting on the specific agenda items only and addressing the full body. Public speakers will not engage in a conversation with the mayor, the chair, or the council members. And all members of the committee and staff and the public are expected to refrain from abusive language. And repeated failure to comply with the code of conduct which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting may result in removal from the meeting. Okay. And now we'll go to review of the work plan. And I do have a change for the orders of the day at least. And so we've got a request from staff to hear them items slightly out of order, moving item 1 down below item 3. So we'll start with item 2, and then 3, and then 1, and then 4. I don't believe we have any other items being recommended for being dropped or deferred. I'll ask my colleagues. I don't see any hands up from them. So let's see here. If we can get a motion to accept the change to the orders for today.
So moved. Second.
We have a triple tie. We'll give the motion to Councilmember Arenas in a second to Councilmember Mahan. And appreciate your enthusiasm. And can we get a roll call vote, please?
Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Corrales.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And we'll go now to consent. And we have one item on consent. Do we have any speakers from the public for consent item? I don't see anybody in the building. Anybody online?
There are no members of public.
Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call vote, please.
Arenas, Jones,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Corrales.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go back to Arenas. I don't know if she might have fallen off for a second. She's
Chair,
back.
I was gone for a minute.
Sorry, this is just the consent item.
This is a vote for the consent. Oh, sorry. Yes, it's a yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. That passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item D2. And this is our Fire Department Emergency Response Times Performance Annual Report. Welcome. We have our Chief Sapien, and our Fire Captain, Mark Thomas. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, committee members, and members of the public. My name is Mark Thomas. I'm a captain with the San Jose Fire Department. I'm here today with Fire Chief Robert Sapien. I'll be presenting today on the Fire Department's Emergency Response Times Performance Annual Report. San Jose Fire Department's Emergency Response Times Performance Standard specifies San Jose Fire resources arrive on scene within 8 minutes, 80% of the time. This includes 3 distinct segments that include alarm processing time, 2 minutes from receiving the time of call to the time of dispatch, turnout time, 2 minutes from dispatch to units going en route, and travel time, 4 minutes from en route to arrival of dispatched address. The highlighted sections of the slide represent those three segments. In fiscal year 21-22, the department's average arrival time was within 8 minutes, 70.79% of the time, which is 9.21% below standard. The fire department also provides advanced life support first responder services under the agreement between the City of San Jose, Santa Clara County Emergency Medical Services Agency. This agreement provides first responder funding contingent upon meeting certain performance requirements, including scene arrival within 7 minutes, 59 seconds for calls requiring Code 3 response. That's lights and sirens. Under the standard, the time starts when a resource is dispatched and stops upon arrival at the dispatch location. Specifically, the turnout and travel time segments together must be 7 minutes, 59 seconds or under to meet the standard. The fire department has met the county's 90% standard 51 consecutive months. This graph shows the response time performance for fiscal year 2020 through 21. This is a month-to-month performance for both the city's 8-minute 80% of the time standard, which is in red, and the county's 8-minute 90% of the time standard, which is in black. Here you see the San Jose Fire Department's response time performance from July 2021 to June 2022. This is a month-to-month performance for both the city's 8-minute 80% of the time standard, which is in red, and the county's 8-minute 90% of the time standard, which is in black for fiscal year 21-22. The fire department's response time performance is impacted by private ambulance system performance. During the months of November 2021 to February 2022, the County of Santa Clara experienced an influx of COVID-19 cases, and the department had a correlating high call volume that required resources to remain on scene on EMS responses for extended periods while awaiting ambulance arrival for patient transport. The result was an increase in instances where the fire department resources were unavailable for subsequent calls in their first due response areas. I would like to draw your attention to the 5 boxes on the top black line. There were adjustments made to those numbers after further reconciliation with County EMS. The department was able to apply qualifying exemptions for situations where the response network was under unusual pressure, such as periods of greater alarms were occurring or when the department was providing mutual aid to other organizations. These reconciliations helped raise those months to above 90% standard and helped us to extend our continued compliance to 51 months in a row. This slide includes an overlay from the previous graph with the Santa Clara County COVID-19 positive patient hospitalizations within the same time period. The spike in COVID cases reflects directly on the relationship between ambulance availability and the fire department's response time. The spike in COVID hospitalizations put an additional strain on both agencies' abilities to meet the response times. The department engaged with County EMS to discuss response network underperformance caused by delayed ambulance arrival. This graph displays the department's performance for alarm processing, turnout time, and travel time response segments from January 2020 through June 2022. The red line indicates monthly call volume. As previously mentioned, the fire department response time performance was at its lowest during the peak of COVID-19 infections due to high call volume and extended on-scene times due to unavailability of ambulance resources. This heat map monitors travel time challenges greater than 4 minutes. The high call volume areas shown at the core of the city experienced the most extended travel time responses. As shown in the previous slide, travel time segments are the primary driver towards response time underperformance. The department's efforts to augment resources through newly built or planned fire stations such as 20, 32, 36, and 37 are expected to result in improved travel time performance overall, but particularly in the areas noted on this map. Response time performance can be influenced by multiple factors. In fiscal year 21-22, the department experienced its highest record call volume at 103,145 calls. That's an 8.8% increase over fiscal year 2020-21. Development, including high-density housing infill, traffic patterns, economic conditions, call volume, and recent public health conditions all impact emergency response resource availability. This slide provides a snapshot of the real-time business intelligence tool that the department utilizes when measuring their response time compliance throughout the year. We continue to use BI dashboard or business intelligence dashboards like this one to monitor day-to-day performance and guide decisions on development, deployment levels, and field activities. In conclusion, the department will continue to advance strategies towards optimizing response performance. Key strategies on the horizon include those listed in resourcing, technology, and analytics. I want to thank the committee for your continued support towards the fire department response time performance. The fire chief and I are available for any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to members of the public first if we have any. I don't believe we had any cards here.
There are no members of the public.
And then anybody online? No.
No.
Okay. So we'll go to members of the committee next. I see Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks, Chair. I'll be very quick. I really appreciate the update and how data-driven the department is here. This is great information. Appreciate the strategies you all are pursuing and that you're optimistic that new stations are going to help. I was just curious. I did not read the chart in slide, I believe it was slide 6. I was confused maybe by the description of it. What I saw was a big spike in hospitalizations, but actually our response time lines seem to be pretty flat. So I was just curious if there was something I was missing in the interpretation of that data. Slide 6, I believe.
Thank you, Councilman, for your question. Let me get to that slide and I'll try to explain. One second while we get to that slide. So what I was trying to explain with that graph was we did have 4 of those 5 months during that time where we did have the peak COVID infections going on in the county, and we did show a drop in some of our calls. We had boxes that were in the 90 or below the 90 percentile through the reporting system, but once we were able to reconcile with county EMS, those numbers were able to be brought back up to the standard for an overall time of over 90%.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I didn't see that much variance in the chart. It actually looked like it could have been almost statistical noise. I don't know what the significance threshold is there, but I got it. Okay, that sounds good. It doesn't look like we were able to get the chart. Oh, there we go. I think it's the next one. I just was surprised. I think if we go one more, yes, this one, seeing the huge spike in positive cases, I frankly would have probably expected a bigger impact on response times. Those lines look fairly flat to me, or kind of just statistical, normal variation. But I get you're saying there that those boxes across the top, that might be why we had 3 months in a row where we were just under. Is that right?
Thank you, council member. Yeah, we do see, I know the sensitivity looks mild, but that is what we see under peak periods like greater alarms and mutual aid periods. So it doesn't create as dramatic a spike as you see, for example, in the hospitalizations, but we do see downward performance during those periods, and that was what we were trying to illustrate here.
Yep, got it. Makes sense. Well, you all did a good job of keeping it pretty darn close. Okay, well, with that, I'll go ahead and move acceptance of the report.
Second.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up from committee members online. Give a second there. Okay, I had a question on that same slide. I don't know if you have to bring it up, but slide 6, there was a double asterisk at the bottom talking about final adjusted performance was reconciled 92.04% for January 2022. it doesn't look like it fits on that slide. Was that referencing from the slide before?
Thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, it can be confusing. So there's 2 stages to our reporting process. The San Jose Fire Department takes our response time data, and we estimate what we believe the reporting should be based upon our analytics, and they are adjusted for those things that are allowable in the county. The county actually uses a separate data set, and they do their own calculations, and we end up in kind of a process month to month where we reconcile between the 2 data sets. Generally, the county's holds, and the county's has generally been more forgiving, if you will, relative to our performance. So we tend to perform higher under their calculations.
So just as an example, then that double asterisk down there at the bottom of the slide, not this slide, but it's two slides later. Is that just as an example? Is that what that's for? I didn't see where the double asterisk was referencing to, so I'm just kind of reading it as January 2022, which to me would be on slide 5. I see January 2022. The county number looks like compliance, or it looks like we were at 89.72%. And then the next slide, if you can go to slide 6, at the bottom there, it says final adjusted performance was reconciled 92.04. So is that what you're referencing then right now, what you just said? Is it actually what we had calculated on our part was 89.72, and then after the adjustments from the county?
Final county adjustment would be what's in that double asterisk.
Okay, and so we're not seeing the final county adjustments on this slides then?
Right.
Okay.
All of the adjusted numbers eventually were above 90% under the county's calculations. We're providing you with what we when we analyze our data, what the results are.
Okay, and so are you and was that just as an example? Is that why that was there?
Right.
Okay. So, and it looks like they are a little more forgiving. I mean, 92 versus our 89. So it's obviously a positive for us, right? Because we certainly want to be above the 90% standard. For many years we weren't, and I was wrestling through that with the department, right, on how we could get there. And certainly, I know you have been at this issue for years, and so the fact that it we're above 90 across the board is substantial. Is there a way in future reports you could maybe show that on a slide, what the county adjusted is, or is that not possible?
We can. We're still working to understand exactly how they're getting to their number, which is why we've withheld putting it up. But we get the adjusted compliance from them. Ultimately, we just need to learn a little more about how they go about getting to that number.
Okay, but you would have most of the data on.
Yeah, we could provide it, sure.
Okay, I just think that'd be helpful because I'm looking at this and looking at it ahead of time, right? You could look at it kind of getting nervous and then reading the report and it sounds like, oh, okay, we're actually fine. So I think it throws me off a little bit, right? Looking at that. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, knowing that based on the county's calculations or their adjustments at least.
We could add it as a third line. I think I want to keep the methodology the same over the long haul so we know sort of what the baseline was. But yeah, we could add an additional analysis there.
Okay. That's all I have. I don't see any other questions from my colleagues. We did have a motion, right? Yes, okay. So if we can get a roll call vote, please.
Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Peralez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Get back on track here. All right, now we'll go to item D3. This is the Fire Department Sworn Staffing Levels Annual Report. Kicking it back to you, Chief.
Thank you very much, Chair and committee and members of our community. Good afternoon. My name is Robert Sapien. I'm the fire chief here in the San Jose Fire Department. I am here again with Captain Mark Thomas of our Field Operations Bureau, and we will be summarizing the 2022 Fire Department Staffing Levels Annual Report and at the conclusion, we will try to answer any questions that the committee may have. This is item D3. The San Jose Fire Department provides all hazards emergency response to all areas of the city and unincorporated areas of Santa Clara County under agreement between the City of San Jose and the Santa Clara County Fire Protection District. The department also responds to statewide mutual aid requests under the California Office of Emergency Services Master Mutual Aid Agreement. In fiscal year 2021-2022, the San Jose Fire Department responded to more than 103,000 distinct incidents. The department deploys resources within city limits out of 34 fire stations, including 5 battalion chiefs, 33 fire engines, 9 truck companies, and 3 specialty units. 190 personnel are staffed daily. Staffing levels may be augmented beyond the normal 190 to meet particular threats or events. There are 170 authorized sworn positions. Excuse me, that's the wrong number. There are 720 authorized sworn positions in the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. Personnel enter the sworn ranks of the department in the firefighter rank. Within the 267 firefighter positions, the department seeks to maintain 173 licensed paramedics and 94 emergency medical technicians. Once in the department, sworn applicants meeting minimum qualifications and passing testing standards are placed on promotional eligibility list to advance through the ranks. This table reflects the number of authorized position in each sworn classification. "717 sworn personnel are assigned to fill 570 sworn field positions, providing backfill capacity for absences for things like vacation, sick leave, and other reasons, and to backfill for position vacancies. Over the previous 5 years, the department's sworn vacancy rates have ranged from 2.7% to 8.5%. Fluctuations in overall vacancy rates are primarily driven by the timing of academies, attrition due to retirements, and growth. For example, the addition of Fire Station 37. As anticipated, based on department seniority, fiscal year 2021-2022 brought a higher than average number of sworn separations, 50 for that year, including 37 due to retirement. In fiscal year 21-22, 47 sworn personnel were hired. The department estimates that it can continue to maintain a hiring rate that will keep pace with attrition and expected growth. Presently, the department is taking steps to conduct an abbreviated or shorter lateral firefighter academy in early 2023 to accelerate hiring and increase the number of licensed firefighter paramedics. While overall staffing levels have been maintained within normal averages, other factors have contributed to increased overtime burden for sworn personnel. These factors have included unusually active fire seasons in 2020 and 2021, COVID-19 related absences, particularly in and around the January 2022 time period, and the COVID-19 related paramedic shortage that has focused burden on paramedics to maintain advanced life support services. San Jose Fire Department serve the city's residents, a population of 976,482, and specific unincorporated areas of Santa Clara County. In comparison to other fire agencies within Santa Clara County, San Jose Fire Department staffing levels are lower than the average of 0.88 at 0.73 per thousand residents. NFPA 1710.4.2.3 requires a minimum of 4 personnel on engine companies. San Jose Fire is the only agency that meets that requirement as a minimum in the county. Truck company staffing in San Jose, truck company staffing levels vary across the county, with San Jose providing a minimum of 4 personnel on each truck company. Amongst U.S. cities with populations greater than 800,000, all but one meet the 4-person engine staffing standard. California cities rank lowest in sworn staffing to population across the country. The department has identified a less than ideal span of control for its 5 battalion chiefs, which will worsen as fire stations 32 and 36 are built and activated. The department continues to monitor the circumstance to ensure adequate command and control and oversight of emergency response resources. In fiscal year 2022-2023, City Council authorized an additional arson investigator position. This additional position will serve to increase arson investigator availability and reduce overtime and standby burden on existing staff. Currently, a promotional examination process is in progress to establish an eligibility list to fill this position. In March 2020, as COVID-19 lockdowns were implemented, paramedic development across the state was all but halted. Classroom course delivery, in-hospital clinical time, and field internships came to a stop and were only recently resumed at a lesser level. As a result, paramedic hiring slowed throughout the state and locally. The impact in San Jose Fire Department is a shortage of firefighter paramedics and increased overtime burden on existing staff. To address this issue, the department is pursuing 3 separate strategies. A short-term strategy is to reactivate existing, licensed, however non-practicing paramedics that are within the workforce. A medium-term strategy is the advancement of the firefighter-paramedic lateral recruitment, with academies to start in early 2023. And finally, a longer-term strategy is to work with local partners to establish new local paramedic training pathways that can help us to prevent this from happening again. And with that, we are available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Let's go to members of the public first. Do we have any cards in person?
No,
And then anybody online?
no, there are no members of the public.
Okay, let's go back to members of the committee. Don't see any hands up online. Looking to my left. All right, so I'll bring it back into myself. I'm just curious. I know, Chief, you mentioned briefly in the presentation around the paramedic licensure, and that had a small section there of the report. What I am kind of learning today, because I wasn't totally aware that it wasn't a sworn position or rank as far as the paramedic. All firefighters are expected to come in with either the EMT or the medic certification, which I was aware of that. But we don't seem to, at least not in this report, right? We're not classifying it that way. I'm assuming you have the data on it. I mean, obviously we've been in a discussion recently about this, and we're trying to address that with the academy, as you point out, the lateral academy. Is that something you can input into these annual reports so that way the council has a better idea moving forward of what the paramedic staffing looks like? I think that it's something that is unique right now, but it is something we're trying to address. So I think it would be helpful if also the council had better data year over year, just like we do here in all the different positions, and being able to break it down rather than I think what is there today. It was I think you added it in, but I think it would be nice to have that
So represent them in the table as if they were separate classifications. Is that what you mean?
No, if they're not, I don't want to give that idea that they are if they're not. But at least a section that actually details a little bit more about the staffing of medics. So here's how many medics we actually have working, what the maybe the number we would like to be at, right, or achieve, because that's one of the challenges we have now, right, is we're understaffed in our medics. And then even talking about and I'm blanking on the term, but the new kind of role, old yet new role of backfilling a medic.
Support paramedic.
The support paramedic. So if you could include that into a section in this annual report to just give a little bit more of a comprehensive look of where we're at with medics.
Sure. That information is always at our fingertips. Easy to include.
Thank you. That's all I have. If we can entertain a motion then.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I do see a hand went up. Councilmember Arenas.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I did that really last minute, but I just remembered that the last time we talked about this, we talked about a pipeline and how do we create that pipeline within our own city services. And one of the things that's really exciting that's happening now under Neighborhood Services and Education Committee is that we are having a Children and Youth Services Master Plan that will provide a comprehensive system of care type of framework for our children and our youth so that they can move within that system, whether it's services that are internal to the city of San Jose or external to some nonprofits or the county. We're all working together so that we can have something more comprehensive for our children and youth. And with that, I was thinking about how are we building that pipeline? How are we integrating, excuse me, how are we integrating that into our youth and services master plan? I know that I asked, like I said last year, that it would be wonderful to have our fire department somehow play a part in feeding this pipeline with our youth. What if anything have you envisioned or thought about?
Thank you for your question, Councilwoman. So one of the things that we've done with outreach lately is we've gotten together with the City Jobs Corps that they've put together, and we've been giving them job fairs and trying to encourage the path to getting into the fire service and have influenced that and trying to get them involved in an EMS type mindset where right now they're working outdoors, and this is an ideal candidate that we would like to try to recruit to the fire service. So we've been actively working with other city departments to try to encourage that relationship and open that pathway.
Mm-hmm. I hope that we can potentially have a presence from the fire department at the advisory meetings that Angel is and Laura Buzo are heading for the Child and Youth Master Plan, so that you can be placed strategically within some of the programs. Maybe after some of the kiddos graduate and they're moving into college, that this is one of the options that they can move into and that can actually see what kind of job that they can have within the city of San Jose if they are, if they're tapped on the shoulder and said, and just like you're doing in your outreach efforts, but this way it's a lot more strategic. We have captive audiences that are going through an online high school what is that alternative? A GED, excuse me, a GED. And so this is when this is when youth are actually thinking about, well, what about my next step? What do I want to do with this GED? Do I want to continue to move on in my education? Do I want to stop and take a look at what my options are now in terms of workforce? I think we have a lot of our youth within our programs, and an opportunity to influence where they may be able to develop or how they may be able to develop. And I think it needs to be done strategically. I love that there's, outreach and that we target our youth. I just think that there needs to be an effort to be more strategic about how we intertwine some of our programs so that we can lead them back to public service. Is that something that you would be, or Chief, that you all would be able to participate in terms of the Child and Youth Master Plan?
Thank you, Councilmember. We'll certainly connect with Angel Rios to see what opportunities are there.
Thank you.
That conclude your comments? Yes.
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now we can do a roll call vote.
Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Perales.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move back up to item D1. Thank you, gentlemen. This is the utilization of funds for rearresting high-risk individuals status report. We have Deputy Chief Brian Schaab and our Captain Gina Tibaldi. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members, and members of the public. I am Brian Schaab, Deputy Chief of Police for the Bureau of Field Operations, and with me is Acting Deputy Chief Gina Tibaldi from the Bureau of Investigations. And we are here to present to you today on the utilization of funds for rearresting high-risk individuals status report. So I'm going to start off with just an overview of what we're going to talk about today, and then we'll get into it. So first, we'll talk about our background, kind of what got us here, what the directive was, what our implementation plan is going to be, some of the policy and safety considerations in that plan. We're going to talk a little bit about our Bureau of Field Operations and their involvement in that plan, as well as our Bureau of Investigations and their involvement in that plan. We'll go through a couple case examples, and then we'll open it up to questions. So first off, I'd like to talk a little bit about the post-arrest process. We're going to break that up into three different categories: pre-pandemic, where we were at during the pandemic, and where we're at right now. So pre-pandemic, the way that the post-arrest process works is once a defendant has been arrested and booked into jail, the state law, the penal code specifically, mandates that all superior courts create a bail schedule on an annual basis. Bail schedule is the amount of bail that is to be set for the most common crimes that defendants are arrested and booked into jail for. Once that bail schedule is set and the defendant is booked into jail, there's three things that will happen after that, or excuse me, at some point during that process, within a few days, a magistrate will review that arrest, and then the magistrate has three options from there. And that is to remand the defendant with the current bail schedule attached, to increase or decrease that bail amount, or to release the defendant on what is referred to supervised own recognizance or own recognizance, commonly referred to as SORP or OR. And that is when the defendant is released without bail, with certain restrictions and or guidelines that they must follow. As we entered into the pandemic in April of 2020, the California State Court Judiciary Committee instituted what was commonly been referred to as zero bail. And that was done in order to safeguard jail population and increase public safety by trying to limit the spread of the pandemic. And what that resulted in was all but the most violent felonies, serious crimes, and certain misdemeanors were to receive a zero bail allotment. So that revised that mandated bail schedule that I spoke about earlier. In addition to that, Santa Clara County presiding judge at the time issued a recommendation for a cite and release for all crimes which had a previous bail amount of $25,000 or below. And that was a cumulative total for all charges. What that resulted in is many more arrestees being re-released on some violent felonies where they may not have been released pre-pandemic. Where we're at now is that has since been lifted. It was lifted in August of this year. So we're back to our normal bail schedule. Going back to the increase in violent offenses by post-release violent defendants, there's a myriad of examples I can give you. Several of them resulted in arrestees who would have normally been either remanded in custody or had high bail amounts being released on zero bail, and then in some cases within just weeks, reoffending in other violent cases, whether it was examples of assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, and or conspiracy, gang violations as well, gang assaults. So then we're starting to look at, now we're looking at the interagency coordination process for improvements. How can we fix this now that we're beyond the zero bail? There's a couple things that we do both internally and externally. Internally, our officers work with the Bureau of Investigations on a regular basis and look at offenders that have either reoffended and or the most violent crimes that have occurred, and our special operations and our covert response unit make those arrests and apprehensions a priority. Externally, we also work with our county partners. Most specifically is the District Attorney's Office and the Crime Strategies Unit. Within that unit, there is a protocol with the Gun Reduction Program, GRIP, as well as the Priority Gun Offender Program. And so we have officers from both the Bureau of Field Investigations as well as the Bureau of Investigations that meet with the Crime Strategies Unit on a weekly basis to identify those people who present the highest risk to the public safety. And then we actively look for and try to locate and arrest those individuals. With regard to improvements in the process, there were a couple things that we were looking at both during the pandemic and now post zero bail. One of those is to train our officers to request, when appropriate, high bail motions. One of the things that the courts allow is for when both pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and now, if the current bail schedule at the discretion of the officer to request it is not sufficient enough to protect public safety, we can request higher bail. We are looking at redesigning our felony affidavit form, which is the form that is used to establish probable cause for the magistrate to make a determination on when they go through the post-arraignment process, post-arrest process, to include the ability to request high bail and make the argument for that in that form. We are also working with the Crime Strategies Unit to train our officers on how to do that effectively. And that brings us to the last point of the mayor's budget message and direction and funding is, as you know, in the city manager's budget request, there's $300,000 that was allocated towards this function and to create a protocol on how we can best utilize those funds to target these high-risk priority offenders. So our implementation plan is this. First, starts with the determination of applicability, right? So that comes back to the city manager's budget direction, which is to focus on the post-release violent offenders who have failed to appear. So those folks who have bench warrants for failing to appear on either violent felonies and or people who have failed to appear on other felonies where they have violent felonies in their background. With the idea being that these are the folks that pose the most imminent threat to public safety in our community. Once we identify those folks, then it's then to look at our policy and safety considerations. All apprehensions are taken very seriously at the San Jose Police Department, but the apprehensions of violent felons are of particular concern because they have the highest risk to our officers, the suspects that we're going after, and of course, public safety as well. And we'll talk about those here in a minute. And then we look at the unit assignment for that apprehension. Of course, all officers within the police department have the capability of apprehending wanted suspects and even wanted felons. But when we know we are targeting violent felons that are most often armed, those apprehension efforts are given to only a select few units within our department. First and foremost, there is the Covert Response Unit within our Bureau of Investigations. That is our team that is specifically trained, and their primary function is that apprehension of violent felons. We also have several units within the Bureau of Field Operations that are specially trained to go after violent felons. And that is our MERGE unit. It's a Mobile Emergency Response Group and Equipment. It's our SWAT team. And then we have our Violent Crimes Enforcement team and our Metro teams, who are also trained and able to go after some of these felons. And we'll talk about those few units here in a second as well. Once the assignment has been given to the specific unit, then we begin our surveillance and apprehension efforts. There's several things that will happen in that process, and we'll talk about those here in a second as well. Lastly, we're going to look at our cost analysis and outcomes tracking, how we're going to make sure that we are tracking these funds and making sure that we're able to report back to this committee with solid data on how we use that funds, how many arrests we were able to make, what offenses those arrests included. So we have a plan in place for that as well. And lastly, we will memorialize all that in an informational memo to City Council. This slide just really illustrates kind of all the things that go into the pie in order to make this apprehension effort possible. It's their violent history, their pretrial release, and then the fact that they're wanted for that, which crimes. So if we're looking at our policy and safety considerations, several things that the units will go back into and they will look at. The investigative background is the information they will glean from either the Bureau of Investigations unit that is handling the case or the Crime Strategies unit that is tracking the suspect and getting the background from them on the details of the original arrest, the failure to appear, and whether or not they meet the criteria outlined in the memorandum. We'll go into warrant verification, making sure that the warrant is active and that the person hasn't been, for instance, arrested in a jurisdiction outside of our county where we may not be aware. So making sure the warrant is still active is an important part of this. Conducting a threat assessment so that we know that we are sending the right personnel into this mission, into this apprehension is critical. Creating that operational plan that we spoke about to make sure that we are looking at every possible contingency that this specific apprehension might raise. And then we have a plan for each one of those potential contingencies. And then going into the actual surveillance, the actual location, trying to find the suspect and making sure that we are sticking to that operational plan to take them into custody as safely as possible for everyone involved, the officer, the suspect, and the community. So let's talk briefly about our Bureau of Field Operations. The first unit here is our Violent Crimes Enforcement Team, or VSET. Give you a little bit of background on VSET and what they've done in the last year. In fiscal year 21-22, VSET made 155 on-view felony arrests, 75 warrant arrests. They served 31 search warrants and seized 86 firearms. The unit is currently staffed by 12 officers and 2 sergeants. The Bureau of Field Operations Mobile Emergency Response Group and Equipment, or MERGE unit, or SWAT team. In fiscal year 21-22, the MERGE unit made 89 apprehensions, served 90 search warrants and parole searches, responded to 18 critical incidents, and conducted 13,443 hours of training hours. They're currently staffed with 18 officers and 2 sergeants. Our Metro unit in fiscal year 21-22 made 70 on-view felony arrests, 58 warrant apprehensions, served 46 search warrants, and seized 37 firearms. They're currently staffed with 11 officers and 2 sergeants. The Bureau of Investigation's Covert Response Unit. In fiscal year 21-22, CRU made 176 apprehensions, served 115 search warrants, conducted 221 surveillances, and seized 84 firearms. They're currently staffed with 13 officers and 3 sergeants. A quick case example that would kind of give you an idea of what it takes to make an apprehension and the personnel hours associated with it. This case comes from our crew unit. Thank you. This case comes from our crew unit, and it was with regard to a prolific burglary case with multiple prior arrests for firearms. This apprehension took a cumulative 208 hours invested to make the apprehension happen. And the cost breakdown on that apprehension was $25,400. I will tell you that this was a pretty straightforward apprehension that only took a couple days. I could give you examples of apprehensions that take sometimes weeks, and the estimate can easily go upwards of $100,000 in hours invested. Each case is obviously very, very unique and comes with its own set of issues that require the different planning. And so this is just a round ballpark idea of what some of these investigations take. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll go to members of the public first. Do we have any cards in person?
No.
Okay. I see one hand online.
Blair Beekman?
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for this item. Boy, my name is misspelled. Looks silly. But thank you for this item. Boy, the police department really went into how they want to be working. And I guess that's commendable. I like honesty. I like, being matter of fact about what they want to work towards. I think it's now important that as a council, you take this in and learn and hopefully can speak a language for this item that can offer different options. And it's been quite an issue this past summer and into the fall that I hope has been better and better worked on and developed, in the mayoral contests, in our city politics, and I hope the process has gone well. I hope it's been a good discussion all the way around. So a real honest matter of factness from the police. I thank you for that. Now I hope the council can talk about it more in terms of different options that we can have for the future of such an issue. And I know that this is an important issue for yourselves, but to always look for different options has to be considered as important. And I hope that can be offered by council here today. And I guess I don't have much else to say at this time, but just thank you for this item. It is a difficult item to address and work on, and good luck how you can do that here at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Back to council.
And first up will be Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy Chief Shab. I think everybody is frustrated, and I know that you and your department are frustrated. And thank you for walking us through kind of all the steps that you take to go after the violent offenders. But I'm still trying to figure out why they're even being released in the first place. And I know, I understand during COVID, we had zero bail and we were releasing a lot of folks, but that's been, eliminated. So why are these violent offenders even being released in the first place? Is it because of state law or county practices, DA not willing to pursue or be more aggressive, or judges that are releasing these violent offenders? Where's the disconnect?
Great question, Vice Mayor. I wish I had the answers to all those. I will tell you that I don't. What I can tell you is that we have a great relationship with our district attorney's office. We are on the same page in terms of making sure that the most violent offenders in our city are held accountable and held so that they can't go back and reoffend. I can tell you that there is a great degree of discretion when it comes to a magistrate's ability to take in all of the factors and make a determination on whether or not someone should be held. I can also tell you that sometimes it's very difficult for them. If I go back to that post-arrest pre-arraignment process where the defendant is arrested and they're awaiting arraignment, and the magistrate is charged with making a determination on whether or not they should be held. And going back to those three things that they can do, hold the current bail, increase or decrease, or release on SORP. I know that they make that determination with a quick snapshot that's provided to them by pretrial services. And sometimes that snapshot isn't as in-depth as maybe even they would like it to be. And so one of the things that we're doing actively to try and fix that is, like I mentioned, trying to get the felony affidavit form redone. And that's a county form. And we're actively working with the district attorney's office, who is kind of spearheading that, so that we can get that critical information to the magistrate that's charged with making that decision, so that they have the most information they can possibly have to make the correct decision, what we believe is the correct decision. So it's one of the things that we're doing to try and alleviate that.
And where are we with the form? I mean, is it just a question of formatting, adding a couple additional boxes?
Yeah, it's all of that, Vice Mayor. It's a matter of formatting, trying to create the form so that it doesn't become too cumbersome, but it also incorporates everything it needs to. And this is a form that will affect not just the San Jose Police Department, but every law enforcement agency within this county. It's the same county that every law enforcement agency uses. So there needs to be some collaboration that includes everybody in how this is done, and not just be, this is what San Jose wants, this is what's needed for our community as a whole, the entire county.
And then totally understand why there's an emphasis and focus on violent offenders, but as you well know, just quality of life, property crimes and burglaries and thefts are a major issue as well. And you have the same people that are committing crimes over and over again. They're being arrested and released and committing more property crimes. What is the strategy to address that? Because, even though they're not violent, I mean, it's definitely diminishing the quality of life. And I'm still trying to track down my bicycle that was stolen over a year ago. So
I'm still looking for it, Vice Mayor. I'm still looking.
I appreciate that.
Another great question, Vice Mayor. And, I'll be honest, it's difficult for us as a law enforcement agency to really have a lot of impact on that side of it, because that's once we make the arrest and write the report and book the person in jail, I don't want to say our part is done, because it's not done. But that post-arrest release pretrial services piece is something that we certainly will provide our input into and make our concerns known. But at the end of the day, the courts have their mandates that they are going by, and our job is to then, we're now left kind of trying to do what we can to mitigate some of those issues on our end.
Are those mandates coming from the state or the county? Where are these judges getting these mandates to release?
Both. So if we go back to the zero bail mandate, that was a state mandate that came down from the State Judicial Advisory Committee. The one I mentioned earlier about the change in the cite and release protocol and going up to 25,000, that was one that was a county mandate that came from the then presiding judge at the time. So it's a combination of both.
Okay. Because it's just not sustainable. If you, again, having the same people committing crimes over and over again, being arrested and released, for our community and our residents, it's just not sustainable. So whatever we need to do to address that, fix that, advocate, lobby our state representatives, we need to know that, because again, my residents are just, suffering from being victimized over and over again by the same people.
Agreed.
Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Assistant City Manager, Lee Wilkins.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something Deputy Chief Shab had said when he was talking about the magistrate and kind of that window into what our public safety professionals know, whether they're on the PD side, sheriff or DA's office. They actually don't have access to the same data we do. There's data sharing and privacy agreements. So in addition to the affidavit form, which I agree with the Deputy Chief, that is really important. And I think that was an aha moment for a lot of us when we were meeting with all the groups, that really needed to be looked at and have some streamlined processes, especially for the ones where we know that we're rearresting time and time again, but also kind of advocate to the state around these data sharing agreements. So the magistrate, when they're looking at the affidavit, also have the context and the history of each individual suspect, which isn't necessarily the case right now. So that will be something that we're going to be advocating for. And to your point now, and you'll see it in December, and you'll have the ability to influence next year's legislative guiding principles. But as the state does look at criminal justice reform and jail reform, as they're making those decisions, obviously you guys have the ability to weigh in, but we're going to be much more aggressive along with the county of talking about the downstream services and the other impacts that come from those decisions. And so you'll see that in December when that comes forward to the full council.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now go to members online. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks, Chair. Appreciate it. Deputy Chief, I appreciate the report and that this work is being prioritized. I think it's really important. I did want to go back to the felony affidavit just for a moment, the form. So, sorry, did you give us timing? I didn't hear a timeline. Do we know at this point for when the new form, the updated form would be rolled out?
We do not have a timeline right now.
Okay. Do we have a sense of what we need to do to get a timeline? I assume we're kind of blocked on, is it pretrial services or what do we need to do to accelerate that?
We're in the pretty early stages of that where we're working with all the county partners, all the county agencies to try and identify first what we need to be on that form and then start to actually draft the new form. So I can get a little bit better timeline when I talk to the group and report back to the committee.
Okay, sounds good. Sure, you're doing everything you can to accelerate it. Just seems like something we should, given the importance of this, be able to move quickly if folks are motivated. When we have the new form, do we know, will there be, will we need to do more training on our end? What are the implications back on our end?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question. We will absolutely be doing more training on our end to first, educate our officers with the new form, but then also we're rolling out a video that's just about ready for release as kind of like a stopgap measure right now to train our officers on how to get the request for high bail and when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate. We don't want to go asking for high bail in every single case because then, obviously that diminishes the value of that tool. And so that video and training has been completed and that should be pushed out within the next couple weeks.
Great. Yeah, and that makes sense. I'm curious, beyond improvements to the form and being able to basically better prepare our case for pretrial services and the magistrate, are there other strategies you all are exploring for improving how we communicate with the magistrate or maybe bringing greater awareness beyond what they may read in the MERC or whatnot, greater awareness to this problem, specific examples? I mean, is there any sort of education or dare I say advocacy that we're doing to just make sure that they're aware of kind of the extent of the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Councilmember. We collaborate with our district attorney's office on a regular basis. We look at cases as they occur that causes us concern. And each time we get a case like that, we absolutely do go back and kind of voice those concerns to the courts so that they're aware of these concerns as they occur.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then just back on this particular expenditure, because it's not a huge sum of money, clearly, can you give us just a sense of what you think the impact is and kind of the timeline for drawing down these additional resources?
Sure, Councilmember. It's like I said in the case examples, it's pretty tough to say. I think, quite frankly, there's a handful of cases that are so complex, they take so long to find the suspects and then conduct the surveillances and the apprehension plans that, I mean, we could go through the entire sum of money in just a handful of cases. If we look at some of the lower hanging fruit, so to say, where the cases aren't so complex, where they're not actively on the run, we might be able to get several more arrests out of it. It's really hard to say exactly how many we'll end up with.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It seems to me, I mean, you tell me, is it fair to say that, with the additional resources here, we're talking about on the order of probably a few additional cases, and probably the bigger impact is the changes to the overall process and then being able to sort of better make the case for a higher bail amount in kind of the rest of the sort of more routine police work that we do. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if I'm being honest, I think that the biggest impact we have is through staffing, right?
Yeah.
Our biggest ability to impact how many violent offenders we're able to take off the street comes down to how many officers we have that can do that job. If we go back to, the stats for those units that conduct these operations, they're making huge impact on a daily basis as it is. To try and get them to do more when they're already, doing as much as they possibly can is difficult. The way we do more is by adding more to them.
Councilmember Mahan, Lee Wilcox, Assistant City Manager. I would just say I've reached a similar conclusion as you, as well as I think the police chief has as well. So we're lucky that Brian and Gina here are kind of focused on going backwards and trying to rearrest some of the folks and focused on this program. But I know the chief, myself, and others are spending quite a bit of time with the county and the other partners on that forward process. So obviously a lot of different circumstances with zero bail and the pandemic, but it certainly pointed out a lot of things that can improve so that we don't end up in the same situation. So I don't know what the 300,000 ultimately accomplishes, although I know the deputy chief's taking it pretty seriously. But I do see a lot more potential and importance on what we do with those partners moving forward.
Yeah, that was what I was sensing. I'm glad. I mean, it's a nominal sum, obviously, in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's great to hear that our pushing and our advocacy is leading to more systemic changes that could have a bigger impact over time. So that's a positive. And then final question from me is when would be the next time that we could get an update on what's going on with the form and maybe a status check on some of the stats around repeat arrests and those sorts of things? Do we have a sense of when would be appropriate timing?
Sure. I mean, I think it would be reasonable to be able to come back here on a quarterly basis or biannual basis to give you like a midterm report or a quarterly report on where we're at.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't have a particular time frame in mind. Was just kind of curious. Would definitely want to, get that at some point, hopefully relatively early next year. But great. Well, I really appreciate all the work being done here. If the vice mayor didn't already, I'll be happy to move the report.
Second.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other hands up. So just a couple questions for myself, and I appreciate the dialogue, and I want to thank the mayor and Councilmember Mahan and Councilmember Carrasco for originally bringing this item forward and sparking conversation and really, I think, some partnership between ourselves and the other agencies, and hopefully being able to achieve some better and safer outcomes for our community. In regards to the $300,000 that we have allocated, in the example that you provided here, for instance, as you described it, maybe a fairly straightforward case costing $25,000. And so we've got $300,000 allocated, the majority of which I'm assuming to be effective will be utilized as you've described for overtime costs, and maybe even bringing back some former members of, say, crew to come and help out on the workload. And the money won't go super far, right? If it's costing that at a minimum, and then more for more complex cases. I'm curious, what do we spend today, or say last year, on overtime already for a unit like crew or other units where just on as you described here, one case, and so the examples for crew, for instance, was 176 apprehensions, 115 search warrants, 221 surveillances, and seized 84 firearms. I'm assuming not all of that was done on regular time. And so already the crew unit, I'm guessing, is racking up overtime. Do you have numbers on that?
Yeah, we're going to try and pull them up for you right now, Councilmember, but I can tell you most of those cases involve some type of overtime with the crew unit, whether it's coming in early to do surveillance, pre-raid surveillance, whether it's coming in to do their workups or their threat assessment, or staying late, or very often being called in their days off to come up on a priority apprehension. So I don't know if we're gonna be able to tell you today what the actual numbers are. Captain Tibaldi has them right now, so I'll let her speak to that in a second. But what I can tell you is a lot of that is overtime. A lot of what they do is on overtime. So I'll let her talk about those numbers.
Just pulling up the numbers for the fiscal year 21-22. We're looking at 14,814 hours for the entire year, and that's for the unit of 13 officers, 3 sergeants, and 1 lieutenant.
14,000
Correct,
in 1 year alone.
for 1 fiscal year.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's significant, and it's overtime hours, so it's a it's a bigger dollar amount. So just kind of rough estimates. The $300,000 wouldn't even cover maybe a quarter of the current overtime that, say, crew is already using. So my initial question is, this 300,000, we're not going to use it to sort of just backfill overtime that would already be accrued through crew or other units. We're going to use it to supplement and bring in even more officers to add time. Is that correct? Or?
Correct. We're trying to proactively identify targeted apprehensions that meet the criteria and then go after those targets on an overtime basis.
Okay. All right. And then when you come back to us, you said you think you could come quarterly? I'm sorry.
Sure, whatever the committee would like. If we can come back on a quarterly basis or a biannual basis, whatever you think is appropriate.
I think biannual would be fine. I don't remember if Councilor Mahan included that into his motion.
I did not specify any frequency.
Okay. I think if you're comfortable, I think biannual would be fine. I think.
Yeah, agreed.
And that way you get kind of a mid-year check. But I do think it would be helpful to hear back, number one, on how far the dollars were able to be stretched, because I do think if you come up with a couple more complicated individuals and cases, you could burn through the $300,000 fairly quickly. And but it would be helpful, right, to know that, to understand this is what it actually is going to cost dollars wise to allocate the bodies, the resources to go out and apprehend even more individuals. And so I think that would be helpful to have that come back biannually. So I'll ask if that's comfortable to amend the motion just to make it very clear.
Works for me.
And I'm okay too.
Great. And otherwise, I appreciate the report back and the work you all have been doing since before the joint session, and then now since the joint session, and more importantly, the officers that are also out there doing this work. We know that a lot of these cases are very dangerous, and that's why we spend so much time on it. And we look at it here just in statistics, and that doesn't always tell that complete story. And so certainly want to offer that appreciation as well. Okay, I'll look back to, we don't have any other hands up, so we'll take a roll call vote.
Arenas? Jones?
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you. Mahan?
Aye.
Perales?
Yes. Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. And we're on to our final action item, which is the item D4, the Park Ranger Program Annual Report. All right, welcome. We have our Supervising Park Ranger, Pam Helmke, and our Deputy Director from PRNS, Avi Yodam.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Avi Yodam, and I'm the Deputy Director of Parks for Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services, joined today by Pam Helmke, Supervising Park Ranger. We're here to provide the committee with 2021-2022 highlights and challenges and the Park Ranger program's work plan for this year. The mission of the program is to provide a safe, enjoyable park experience by protecting and educating the public, providing recreational opportunities, and protecting and preserving and enhancing the natural and cultural resources of the city's parks, trails, and open spaces. In the last year, its 50th year, the program reinforced the generalist service model that the City Council accepted in January 2019 and produced important results in the spirit of Activate SJ, the department's strategic plan. As generalists, park rangers served as stewards of the park system, providing public safety services like wildfire suppression, medical response, search and rescue, and rules enforcement. They also protected and preserved natural and cultural resources and inspired future generations to love and nurture nature. Park rangers provide crucial maintenance and restorative work on natural and historical elements within the parks and offer nature-based programming for individuals of all ages and abilities to inspire love for the outdoors and encourage access to the city's park system. They educated and enforced state and local laws and enforced park rules so that park visitors can enjoy their visit. Park rangers were often first on scene for medical, fire, and emergencies in the parks they oversaw. Supervising Ranger Helmke will share details and examples of these, but first I'll speak to the program's primary concern. In the past year, the program staffing challenges grew as staff departed for a variety of reasons. Since we reported last October, 2 senior park rangers and 3 park rangers left the program, and 1 park ranger voluntarily demoted into a part-time position to make time to pursue a nursing career. Sworn park ranger staffing has reached a low last seen after the Great Recession and layoffs. The department continues to aggressively seek out diverse and highly qualified candidates for park ranger, and recent recruitment efforts, which I'll detail in the next slide, have the potential to bring in much needed influx of new rangers. Additionally, the department has worked with the Human Resources Department and the Office of Employee Relations to update this non-sworn park ranger class specification, which is nearly final, and to secure the services of a qualified human resources consultant to develop a state-certified park ranger apprentice program. The goals of an apprentice program would be to allow the department to recruit candidates who may be unable to complete the required education on their own. Like an intensive extension of the current Resilience Corps program that the department oversees, the apprentice program would allow a motivated candidate to obtain needed college credits while working for the city and gaining practical experience. Upon successful completion of the apprentice program, they will be appointed as sworn park rangers. As I mentioned, the program continues to actively seek out highly qualified, diverse applicants to fill our vacancies. The program has recruited heavily in the past year, contacting parks, ranger, and related organizations across the state and country, attending career fairs for surrounding community colleges, and tabling at local events such as Viva Caius SJ. The program developed a dedicated website to help interested candidates understand and walk through the hiring process, and staff maintained regular contact with potential applicants to cultivate their interest. Since the spring, we have run 3 consecutive recruitments, 2 shown on the screen and 1 that just happened. From the first 2 batches, we received 126 applications, and if you do the math, you'll find that we had a tabulation error on the table, from which we interviewed 21 candidates and we sent 7 to background so far. Another batch of 57 applications was received yesterday and will be screened this week for additional interviews. From these efforts, we optimistically expect to hire 2 or 3 or possibly 4 park rangers and have them join our team in 2023 for Academy. We will also consider applicants who didn't make it through this process for peace officer sworn roles for non-sworn part-time roles. Hiring part-time non-sworn park rangers is the quickest path to add capacity for the program, as those candidates do not go through a complete public safety background screening, including psychological and medical exam, or require a peace officer written exam. The peace officer written exam and public safety background process screen out a number of applicants. Our focus is now shifting to senior park ranger and supervising park ranger recruitment, as we need to rebuild the supervisory and lead ranks to train and supervise a relatively inexperienced workforce. With that, I'll turn it over to Supervising Ranger Helmke to discuss some of the program's highlights and accomplishments from the last year.
Even with a small staff, the ranger team has continued to provide quality service for our communities. Some of the highlights over the last year include celebrating the program's 50th anniversary, as well as the 150th anniversary of Alum Rock Park, with participating in a variety of public programming hosted by our park rangers, recreation staff, and neighboring agencies such as the Open Space Authority, Valley Water, and the Youth Science Institute. Rangers continue to work on resource and maintenance project in the parks. Our largest ranger-led project this year was to rehabilitate a portion of the very popular Mineral Springs Loop Trail at Alum Rock Park. The Rangers worked with the Resiliency Corps members, park maintenance staff, clearing a lot of down rock and dirt off the trail tread, draining and cleaning multiple mineral springs, and servicing the drainage systems that prevent the basin-type springs from back filling with water. In addition to our resource and maintenance projects, the Rangers continue to focus on providing accessible education and interpretive programming in multiple regional parks. Those programs this year have included Ranger-led multilingual hikes to support the Santa Clara County Prescription Parks Program, the Juntos Initiative. We were able to schedule a tour of the Japanese Friendship Garden for visitors with vision impairments. We've supported the department's summer camp programs and youth scouting programs, and provided drop-in programming and tabling events at our regional parks and at the Viva Calle events. Rangers also continue to provide for public safety in our parks. We've been continue to respond to wildlife fires, particularly along the Coyote Creek corridor, medical emergencies, lost or overdue hikers, and lost children. Rangers are also working to preserve our wildlife, including the rescue of a juvenile raccoon. We were out at a fire on Coyote Creek, and one of our rangers in the middle of suppression efforts noticed this little guy trying to climb up a burning tree. So we were able to get in there and rescue him and get him over to the wildlife center. We also rescued a great egret from a neighborhood next to Lake Cunningham who had been traumatized by fireworks over 4th of July. And our current project right now is monitoring waterfowl in our parks for birds possibly affected by the highly pathogenic avian influenza. The Rangers have located and removed several waterfowl from various parks that were suspected of being infected. The disease is highly infectious to both backyard poultry and our wild waterfowl, so removing the animals as quickly as possible is one of our best methods to prevent the spread. Rangers also continue to monitor park activity and enforce rules and regulations. As described in Table 4 of your report, the Rangers continue to adhere to our department's philosophy of using the lowest appropriate level of enforcement, and we continue to clear over 90% of our enforcement contacts with education or a warning.
This year, the department will continue intentionally assigning park rangers to resource management projects and interpretive programs in the spirit of environmental stewardship, education, and resilience, and as part of a general service model. In recognition of the staffing reality confronting the program, the department is also considering further service model changes and adaptations to make the most impact the program can make during what will be a multi-year rebuilding process. And in coordination with the city manager's office and human resources, the department will continue to prioritize recruitment and retention of park rangers and work towards implementation of a body-worn camera program in the near future and a full park ranger duty manual. With that, we recommend the committee accept the annual report on the park ranger program for 2021-2022, and we are available for questions.
Thank you. We go to members of the public first. Do we have anybody in person?
No.
Okay, and online?
Blair Beekman?
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Yeah, for this item, it's an annual report of the park rangers. A long time practicing how to develop the future of our park ranger program. Thank you for this item. To try to offer my 2 cents, you know, my work with accountability, with open public policies and accountability practices with technology. And what that can offer a number of subjects within a community. If the park rangers were up on these ACLU practices and the kind of rights and civil protection ideas they can offer the everyday public, I think it could possibly be a good tool for them to understand, to help in I can't quite think of the term, but harm reduction, harm mitigation practices when you're dealing with you know, different people of the community in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. To have these sort of understandings, I think can help lessen tensions in certain places and certain events. So good luck in park rangers learning what can be a future of choices and how to talk about a future of technology as a more open, shared community process that I think explaining that to the public can offer them some relief in certain situations. Thank you.
Back to council.
Thank you. We'll look in person, and we have Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't sure if I heard it correctly. As far as the recruitment of potential applicants, maybe who don't complete our police academy or decide even during the probation period that it's not the right fit or the right job for them, are we actively recruiting or going after those individuals?
Vice Mayor, that's a great question. We've actually had candidates who have come from the police department's academy process and who've been candidates for us. It's an avenue that we continue to discuss with the police department as well.
Okay, so so how far are we taking those discussions?
Preliminary, just talking about how do we get access to the list of folks who are leaving the process on their end, and that we can reach out to them.
Okay, so right now you don't have access.
We're working towards that.
Okay, and then my next question is, it's probably been about 5 years now where we got a budget position for a neighborhoods park ranger, and I know because of staffing challenges and vacancies, we weren't able to fill that position. But to the best of my knowledge, it's still a budget position. So it would be great if when we have the positions listed out, that position is segregated out and clearly identified as the neighborhood park ranger in the event that we ever get that position filled.
We can do that. Thank you.
Great, I appreciate that. And that's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go online. Not seeing any hands up. So,
I'll make a motion to accept the report.
Thank you. Thank you. I do have a couple questions. Looking at the backgrounding process, looks like you denoted the timeline about 45 days for the recruitment process. And then it looks like potentially, maybe is it close to 6 months or so for the backgrounds and then making the job offer and all. Is that about correct timeline? About 6 months?
It varies. We try to expedite it to the extent possible where we can, I guess for lack of a better term, bundle things. So polygraph, fingerprint, background all tend to go simultaneously. And then, the backgrounds themselves are variable. Our investigator is averaging 6 to 8 weeks on most candidates to give us a report back. So then we usually a couple weeks to get them in for psychological and medical. So from start to finish, from receiving their application till the end is probably a bit less than 6 months. I mean, optimistically, if we really pushed, we could probably get it done in 4 if they didn't have a complicated background. But yeah, and we're trying to expedite it to the extent we can without running into any issues with an incomplete background.
And from what I've learned, it's fairly similar to the police background. Is that true?
Yeah, post requires us, the background is one of those uniform areas in post that applies to all peace officers across the board. So we're also now struggling with the new requirements in SB2.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like we don't coordinate with the police department on that, right? Like we're not using similar backgrounders. Are we using similar psych evaluators?
We both contract with the same 2 psychological firms. City Medical does the medical exams. We contract with a private investigative services to do our backgrounds. Obviously, San Jose PD has their hands full getting through all their candidates. So, and our investigator have always been retired police officers with a strong background in investigations. That are fully post-certified.
For the park ranger backgrounds, you guys
Yes.
have. Okay. I do think I would agree with you. Their hands are full at the moment, but I do think as we look at ways to partner better, like in this recruitment of sharing of data, I do think it would be wise to see what opportunities there would be to collaborate better on all aspects of hiring and training and backgrounding, especially considering the similarities. I up into the point of obviously right when you need to actually be trained to be a ranger and the specific duties are different, but the hiring process and the backgrounds seems very similar. Rather than have multiple contracts in different groups doing that, I think it would be worthwhile to look at how we partner up on that. Similarly, on another partner aspect, I'm reading on the body-worn cameras. I'm not seeing in here language that I was hoping to see, which see if you can answer for me. But why would we not just use the same cameras that our police officers are using, that same technology, the same, or what are we doing with those?
The technology is the same, and actually the police department was kind enough to let us piggyback on their contract to get the better pricing. So it's the exact same camera, the evidence.com system. So technology-wise, it's identical. It's just getting the policy across.
The piggybacking language was the language I was hoping to see in here. Sounds like you didn't get written into the report, but that's what I was hoping to read. So I'm glad to hear that that is the case. That's kind of where I'm going at, right? With every opportunity we have, if it's going to be, the same like body-worn cameras, well, we might as well try to find ways to partner up and do that together, right? And now you could be on a cycle when those cameras need to be updated and right, that where you're not having to be on your own figuring that out. That could be done as a whole. And so I just think I'm happy to hear that. That's what I was hoping to hear with the body-worn cameras in that regard. All right. Otherwise, I'm wishing you best of luck on getting in some new recruits. And I would say be fully staffed, but we also know that fully staffed is relative because if you're looking pre-2010, fully staffed was a little bit more. So, and you highlighted that in the report, something not only from our Ranger program, but I think on the police department side, having the former parks unit, having the mounted unit, I would like to at some point in our future get to that fully staffed again, where we truly can serve our community, all of it, including the parks and open space better. Okay, I'll look back for any hands online. Not seeing any, so we'll take a roll call vote.
Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Peralez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That now takes us to open forum. Just as a reminder, this is on any items that were not on today's agenda. And looking for cards, nobody here in person. I believe we have one online.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the meeting today. I guess to start off first, I really hope we can work towards the ideas of peace negotiation in the Ukraine area. If we use the practices of health and human services, reimagine, equity, I think those ideas are more interesting, and I think people would be more interested to work on in those terms than what's currently being worked on, and that we're going to have to return to at some point. I also wanted to thank very much Councilperson Raul Peralez yesterday at Rules in Open Government, and to Paul Soto, who both offered really important words on the concepts of crossing guards to address the interesting ideas of how to address traffic safety around schools and just the overall issues of traffic safety overall for the future of San Jose. Really creative, important ideas, because as I tried to say yesterday, we may already have a ton of technology in place around schools, that we don't need additional surveillance technology. We need different answers. We need different ways to work and different ways of thinking. And Paul and Raul Peralez both brought that out very nicely. And it was just so helpful, I think, to the process to simply give ourselves choices. And that's so key that with my words yesterday, I can't say enough how to really look into the future of how we talk about technology. We have a really good city government staff that after this current administration is going to really ask questions of the community. And that's hopeful, and that's I'll be looking forward to that good work. And to quickly offer, it was mentioned in the police reporting of this item today, what they want to do with their work. Can we talk about overtime issues in the future and maybe creative, simple ideas like splitting up overtime at 1 hour each, some things like that? Thank you.
Back to council.
Okay, thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.